I have been thinking about these opening statements since forever. I have been waiting and watching. When I saw these finally came out, I jumped out of my seat. Girl, I almost turned the stream on early. Donna Adelson is now in court. I can't even say that without laughing. If you were not following the Adelson family case, I've done multiple videos on this. And like, not only have I done multiple videos on this, if you watch a lot of true crime, it is genuinely one of the most shocking and fascinating court cases I have ever seen. This family wanted so badly to be like mob bosses, but really it's just a matriarch with a narcissistic complex. That's the best way I can sum up Donna Adelson. But you know what? Nobody's gonna sum it up better than the prosecution, okay? Oh, you guys know I hate Donna Adelson so much.
This defendant, Donna Adelson, was part of a conspiracy to hire a hitman to kill her former son-in-law, Dan Markel.
Like I said, I've done quite a few videos on this. If you watch the opening statement, you'll have a good understanding of where we're going with the case. But then afterwards, you can rewatch all of the past ones, including where her son was tried and convicted. And when is Wendy going to jail? All right, let her explain.
This defendant's family had a big problem. And the big problem was Dan Markel. And the solution to that problem was the defendant's son, Charlie Adelson. Charlie Adelson was the solution because he had a girlfriend with connections to the type of people who were willing and capable of pointing a gun at a complete stranger and pulling the trigger.
Charlie ain't like that girl. Man, he even said on the stand, he was like, I did not want to be Catherine's boyfriend. No. She was just not my type. I just needed her to hire a hitman. And then in the opening statement, his prosecution goes say, so Charlie's girlfriend.
The victim in this case, Dan Markel, was known as Danny to his friends and family. He was a loving father to 2 little boys, and he was a highly respected law professor at Florida State University College of Law. Tragically, on July 18th of 2014, Dan Markel was shot in the head in broad daylight in the driveway of his home in the Benton Hills neighborhood here in Tallahassee. The last day of his life began like any other day of his that summer. He woke up, he took his 2 young sons to preschool, and then he went to the gym to work out. But little did he know that throughout his entire routine that morning, he was being followed by 2 hired hitmen who traveled all the way to Tallahassee from Miami for the sole purpose of taking his life.
Wendy Adelson, who has not gone to trial yet and has mostly evaded a lot of this, but it's not like she's given away information to not be prosecuted. I just want to remind you that Wendy wrote down what Dan Markel's daily schedule was and sent it to 2 hitmen. That is so dark.
Dan Markel's neighbor heard a gunshot, and he looked out the window and saw a light-colored Toyota Prius back quickly out of Dan Markel's driveway and speed away.
Really quickly, for people that are not up to date on the Adelson case, or you just need a little reminder, why is this old woman sitting here? Well, it's because Donna is the mother of Charlie Adelson and Wendy Adelson, and she is like this obsessive, crazy, controlling puppeteer mom. And Wendy had a child with her husband, Dan Markel. Well, Donna Adelson decided that she didn't like Dan Markel and she didn't want Dan Markel to have access to the children. She decided that her being, the grandma was good enough for the children and they didn't need a father. So she started pressuring Wendy over the course of weeks to kill her husband, Dan Markel, so that Donna and Wendy could have full custody of the child. I'm sorry, what kind of weird bitch shit are you on for real? Like, go be a grandma. Like, just go be somebody's grandma. You know how easy it is to be a grandma? You know how hard it is to be a mother? You know how easy it is to be a grandma? You sit back and eat fucking Jell-O and say, no, the kids can't come over today, but maybe tomorrow, and then eat your fucking Jell-O. Like, I don't understand.
Dan Markel's car window, his driver's side window, was shattered. His glasses and his phone were on the ground next to his car, and Dan Markel was behind the wheel. He was unresponsive and moaning and terribly injured. The neighbor called 911 and law enforcement arrived to find Dan Markel with a gunshot wound to the head. He was taken to the hospital where he survived for about 14 hours before he was pronounced dead. Dan Markel was only 41 years old. And his little boys, who were deprived of their father after this murder, were just 3 and 4 years old. The scene there, the crime scene, left no trace of the killers. There was no fingerprints, no DNA, no bullet casing, nothing was stolen. And so police began to suspect that this may be a professional killing. The little evidence that they do have sends them down 2 separate paths.
Of course, Donna doesn't know this, but like in a small town, a hit is very obvious to police. It's going to look a lot different than a daytime robbery, which would probably be done by like drug addicts or somebody that needs quick cash right away, you know? Versus it's going to look like a hit, and then they're going to figure out, okay, well, who wants to put a hit on him? But Donna just thought, like, do it clean.
One path is to track down that light-colored Prius that the neighbor saw fleeing from the scene. And the other path relates to motive. Who in Dan Markel's life would hate him enough to hire a professional killer? Both of these paths led directly to this defendant. A review of the divorce case file reveals that Wendy Adelson had asked the court to allow her to relocate to Miami, where she was from and where her parents lived, with her children and Dan Markel's children, in order to be closer to her mother, Donna Adelson, to her father, whose name is Harvey Adelson, and to her brother, whose name is Charlie Adelson. The victim, Dan Markel, as y'all can imagine, is adamantly opposed to this, to his children being relocated to Miami.
The matriarch of the family demanding that everybody stay in the same city when they're in their 30s and 40s feels a bit intrusive to me. Like, if nobody's sick, if everybody in the family is like pretty okay. I mean, every situation is different, but just knowing Donna's personality type at this point, I'm like, oh, that's such a red flag. And Dan probably knew she was a piece of crap.
A review by law enforcement of Wendy Adelson's emails made it clear that her mother, the defendant, hated Dan Markel and was the relentless driving force behind Wendy's relocation efforts to South Florida.
Oh my God.
She was extremely controlling.
Oh my God.
She had very strong opinions about all the decisions in Wendy Adelson's life, whether it be about her career, her relationships, or even purchasing a home.
Ooh.
And if Wendy Adelson would not do as the defendant wanted her to do, the defendant often then enlisted Charlie Adelson, her son, Wendy's brother, to solve the problem by getting him to kind of go to Wendy and persuade Wendy until Wendy ultimately agreed to do what the defendant wanted her to do.
Based on what I know about the case and just kind of where we're at so far, what I think probably happened was Wendy was Donna Adelson's favorite child. She's pretty, she's successful, she's a great mom. But Wendy, I'd be a lot happier if you lived nearby. Well, anyway, so Wendy probably goes through life as Donna's favorite child. And Charlie is kind of, left to the wayside, but sometimes mom will give him a little bit of attention. And they go through this intermittent reinforcement where Charlie just gets a little bit now and then. But then when Donna is mad at Wendy, well, Charlie can get all of mom's love if he does mom's bidding and then pulls Wendy back in. And then once Wendy and Donna are tight again, Charlie gets thrown to the wayside. But he just lives for these moments where mom will give him any ounce of attention. This also makes sense why Charlie was a drug and sex addict that also hated women, because he just randomly, intermittently got attention from his mother. So this dynamic to me is very fucked up. I can't imagine living in this for 30 or 40 years. Congrats to you if you saw the signs of a narc parent, especially a narc parent that triangulates siblings against each other. You would think that they're not supposed to do that because you would never do that to your child, but you would be surprised how fucking weird some people are.
The defendant would guilt trip Wendy Adelson about how much time she and her husband, Harvey Adelson, were having to spend away from their dental practice to visit Wendy and the grandkids in Tallahassee and complain about how the family was losing income, losing patients because of their constant absences.
This reads more like a threat to Wendy from her mother that's never satisfied. If you had a controlling mom that acts like she's your bestie sometimes, if you were that daughter, wouldn't it be kind of scary to get an email like, "This is the most important part of your divorce, Wendy. It's relocation. I sincerely hope that your attorney understands that this is your non-negotiable." You feel like you don't even have a chance to think. Mom's thinking for you.
And not only did the judge deny Wendy's relocation motion, but the judge dismissed it in a way that prevented Wendy Adelson from requesting the relocation again.
Wow.
So Wendy would
Donna
not be permitted to move to Miami to be close to the defendant and her husband with the children at that time or ever. Unless, of course, something happened to Dan Markel.
Bro.
The defendant told Wendy Adelson in emails that Dan Markel has not beaten the Adelson family yet.
Oh, you little super
She
villain.
let Wendy know that the Adelson family is a team and they are trying to win. Donna Adelson suggested in her emails several bribes to get Dan Markel to agree to relocation, like plane tickets, paying for her grandson's education, and the defendant even suggested offering Dan Markel a $1 million bribe to allow the relocation.
Do you know how many of us would love for the dad to be in the picture and want to be there and stay and, take care of the child? Donna's like, you don't need a father figure. You just need us, the Adelsons. In fact, we'll give him $1 million to go away forever, never see the children again, and then we'll tell the children how horrible he was. Yes, that will make the children turn out just fine.
The defendant told Wendy to aggravate Dan Markel like he aggravates you. And the defendant set out a plan of action that the defendant told Wendy would make Dan Markel absolutely miserable. And she's detailing all of these in her emails.
Dan was just a guy. But this is how Donna tries to explain him to Charlie. He's evil. He's causing your mother so much stress. Oh, and he's awful to Wendy. We have to get the kids back. And Dan, just living his life.
And Charlie Adelson was also the person that Donna Adelson relied on to solve her problems. And her daughter and grandsons having to live 8 hours away in Tallahassee was a big, big problem for this defendant. And this defendant made it Charlie Adelson's problem to solve. A few months before the murder in 2014, Dan Markel alleged that the defendant, Donna Adelson, was disparaging him to his children.
Yes.
He was very worried about her trying to alienate him from his children. She was doing this by calling him stupid in front of the boys and telling the boys that Dan Markel was trying to take them away from her. Dan Markel asked the court to prevent this defendant from having unsupervised contact with her grandchildren.
He is warning Donna, hey, stop talking shit about me to my kids, okay? Like, I'm documenting this now at this point, and you will never see the children again.
And this motion was still pending in court when Dan Markel was killed.
Oh my God.
And the murder of Dan Markel ensured that not having access to her grandchildren would never be a problem for this defendant. And what do you know? About 48 hours after Dan Markel was killed, after the shooting happened, Wendy Adelson and the little boys relocated to Miami, moved into the defendant's home with her, and the boys started school down the street. And just like that, their father was effectively erased from their lives, and the Adelsons' big problem had been solved.
Had Donna and the family not been caught, I think that she cared a lot about Wendy and Dan's kids. But after a while, her not processing what she did to Dan and was just like, I win, goodbye. There's a lot of grief, regret, paranoia when you carry out a hit on an extended family member, okay? And if you sit there and act like nothing happens, it's gonna repress in your body and it's gonna build up. And who is Donna gonna take it out on? Who is she going to take her repressed regret and grief and anger out at? Kids that look like Dan Markel. So, like, Grandma, get out of the picture. Just get out of there's no world where these kids are better with you.
So this path of looking into Dan Markel's personal life to see who would have motive to kill him leads law enforcement to the Adelsons, including this defendant, a woman who vowed to never, 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 never give up on getting her daughter and grandsons to Miami.
Wow.
And her son, Charlie Adelson, who told his family that he'd looked into hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel, as Wendy said, was just a joke. But if Charlie Adelson was just joking about hiring a hitman, that joke, that stopped being funny when Dan Markel was actually killed by a hitman.
Girl, great line from the prosecutor. This is important, guys, because if you're new to watching like court cases, we watch quite a few of them on this channel. The prosecutors being a good storyteller and having those big moments where the evidence is right in front of your face is really fucking important in the opening statements. It is really important. We have seen so many cases before where honestly it feels like the evidence was cut and dry, but one attorney was better than the other and their presentation was better and they hooked the jury more. When the evidence is like just barely on the edge, it really comes down to lawyer performance. It does. It does. So every time she's got like a great like narrative, the storytelling is on point, or like there's a line that really grips you, like that's a big win if you're on the prosecution side, which I hope you are.
When law enforcement retraced Dan Markel's steps on the morning of his murder, they uncovered some very chilling surveillance video of that light-colored Prius, fitting the description given by the neighbor, following Dan Markel into the Premier Gym parking lot and waiting for an hour while he was inside, and then following him home from Premier Gym back to Benton Hills. And these surveillance images, coupled with a massive amount of phone and SunPass records gathered in this case, help police track down the exact car used to commit this crime. But police still had to figure out, okay, we got the car, but who was in this car? And why did that person kill Dan Markel?
Damn, dude, they already got the car.
So law enforcement did a painstaking review of digital evidence in this case. And when I say painstaking, finding this Prius and finding evidence in these phone records was not an easy task. And it took much longer than your average investigation of a shooting, as you'll hear.
And you know, Donna's pissed about that.
But law enforcement eventually found the number that communicated with the cell tower that services Premier Gym at the exact time when the Prius was there. And it was a number with a Miami area code, and that number belonged to a man named Sigfredo Garcia. Law enforcement examined Garcia's call logs, and they saw that he was in frequent contact with another number that was present at Premier Gym that day. And that number belonged to a man named Luis Rivera, who is a longtime friend of Garcia, and he's also from Miami. They both are. Police then looked at Garcia and Rivera's phone records, which showed that their phones left Miami 2 days before the murder, so July 16th. They came to Tallahassee, and on the day of the murder, on the 18th, they followed Markel to Premier Gym. The phone data shows that these men turned their phones off just minutes before the murder took place.
Jesus.
And their phones then stayed off for about an hour or so after the murder. What or who is the connection between the killers and the victim? The defendant in her emails obviously had demonstrated ample motive to want Dan Markel dead, but how do we get from these two random and hired killers to her? Well, those phone records that I talked about, they revealed that one of the shooter, Garcia's, most frequent contacts was a woman named Catherine Magbanois. She goes by Katie. The shooter and Magbanois have a long history of an on-again, off-again relationship, and they share 2 kids in common. This is Garcia and Magbanois. And lo and behold, Catherine Magbanois was dating Charlie Adelson. So, Dan Markel was a problem the defendant needed to solve.
I gotta rewatch
The defendant's son, Charlie
trial.
Adelson, was looking to hire a hitman to kill Dan Markel. Dan Markel is killed by a hitman. And who ended up being the hitman? The hitman that killed Dan Markel? Someone with a close relationship to Charlie Adelson's girlfriend, the father of her children. So you can see how both paths, followed by investigators, charted the way to this defendant. Not only by looking into the motive, led law enforcement to the defendant because of her hatred of Dan Markel and her son's apparent efforts to hire someone to kill him, but also looking into that car fleeing the scene led law enforcement to the defendant through her son's girlfriend at the time. So 2 investigations, 1 conclusion. Bank records also showed that Magbanawala's account had a huge spike in cash deposits around the time of the murder.
Harvey!
She deposited more money in her account in the 5 weeks after the murder than in the entire year before the murder. And this was during a time when there was no record of her being employed anywhere. And also, about 2 months after the murder, this defendant added Catherine Magbanawala to the payroll at the Adelson family's dental practice, the one that she kept the accounts for, the defendant kept the accounts for. And the defendant started issuing her regular checks from their business account every 2 weeks, despite the fact that she did not work there at the time. Magbanawala didn't work there.
Dude, shut the whole case down. Shut it all down. Hey, you're following this? Catherine didn't have a job, but money, cash, kept being deposited into her account in large amounts. There was no record of her working anywhere, but she was getting checks from the Adelson family dental practice when Catherine was not working there, not clocking in. She was just getting checks from the Adelson and their practice.
So, the money was talking, but what about the suspects? Law enforcement wanted to know what they were saying. In examining the phone records in this case, law enforcement noticed a distinct pattern of communication surrounding important events or dates in this case.
Man, oh my God.
The phone calls always went from this defendant to her son, Charlie Adelson, and then from her son, Charlie Adelson, to his girlfriend, Catherine Magbanawala, and then from his girlfriend, Catherine Magbanawala, to the shooter, Garcia.
There was a regular pattern of Donna calling Charlie, and then Charlie would call Catherine, and then Catherine would immediately call the hitman. Holy shit, dude! You can't, I just mean on top of everything, the 1080p bank photo, the money just appearing in Catherine's account, them showing up to the house in the Prius and turning the cell phones. Come on, dude. Come on, man.
So at this point, it's been 2 years, almost 2 years, since the murder. And at this point, in April of 2016, Charlie Adelson and Magbanawala are no longer dating. They'd been broken up for over a year. Catherine Magbanawala at this point is actually back together with Garcia. We heard they're on again, off again, and have these kids together. Charlie Adelson has moved on he's had many other girlfriends at that point since Magbanawala. And Charlie Adelson and Magbanawala, though, they are still friends. They remain close friends since their breakup, and they're still in regular communication by April of 2016, even though they're not together anymore. Rivera, the second hitman in that Prius, was in prison by this point, doing time on an unrelated charge. And the defendant is happily taking care of her grandkids all day, every day. So all the members of this conspiracy have presumably gone on with their lives, believing they've gotten away with murder. So what reason would they have to be discussing the murder at that point if police are listening in? They wouldn't. So police needed to stage an event that would generate some conversation, some activity between the members of the conspiracy so they could see who the members of the conspiracy were. So
Donna fell for it.
Undercover agent posing as a blackmailer, and this is an actual picture from the surveillance cameras, that this is the undercover agent passing a piece of paper to Donna Adelson back in 2016.
Great police work.
This undercover agent is posing as a blackmailer, He hands the defendant a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper is a news article about Dan Markel's murder. And written on the piece of paper is a phone number and the amount of $5,000. He tells the defendant that he knows the Adelsons are taking care of Katie.
Oh my God.
And he's basically there to blackmail to get more money out of them or out of her on Rivera's behalf, to even things out, because he knows they're taking care of Katie. He never says Charlie Adelson's name or anything about Charlie Adelson to Donna Adelson. The defendant then puts the piece of paper in her purse and walks away without ever looking at the piece of paper, because she knew exactly what it was about.
True!
Then,
if somebody bumped into you randomly and did that and accused you of something and handed you a piece of paper, I would be like, what is this? I'd make you take it back. But she just took the paper and walked off.
as suspected, based on the previously observed communication pattern, the first person that this defendant calls is Charlie Adelson. Despite the fact that the blackmailer, never mentioned Charlie Adelson to her. On that first call, you would think the first thing that Donna Adelson would say to Charlie Adelson is, "Oh my God, it's so crazy. Some man just came up to me, handed me an article about Danny's murder, and he's demanding money from us." But she never says any of that. In fact, the defendant never says Dan Markel's name at all. Instead, she tells Charlie Adelson that she needs to talk to him in person.
That is such a wannabe mob boss line from Donna. Some paperwork just came in that we need to handle. Her basically saying, Charlie, you need to pay this person $5,000 to get them off my back. Like, that is so Donna of her.
After this call with his mother, the defendant, Charlie Adelson, calls Catherine McBanois.
There it is.
He does not call his most recent ex-girlfriend or even the one before that. He calls Catherine McBanois. And his call to Catherine McBanois is the only call he makes to any ex-girlfriend after getting the information from his mother that the blackmailer mentioned an ex-girlfriend. And he hadn't dated her for about 1.5 years at that point. Neither Charlie Adelson nor the defendant ever reported this attempted blackmail to the police.
Guys, this is one of the greatest paper trails of all time. It just is. It just is. Because these little slime balls really thought that they were gonna maneuver around it, and really, it was the ego. Like, Donna thought she was way too prim and proper to be accused of something like this, and they got her 360. I haven't heard a whole yet. Listen, it's a long opening statement, but I've been waiting my whole life for this.
Charlie Adelson and Catherine McBanois meet in person at a restaurant called Dolce Vita in Miami. And while they sit at their table in this busy, noisy restaurant, an undercover FBI agent is sitting at a table nearby with a camera hidden in a bag, recording the conversation.
Oh my God.
So this is an image from that video recording the conversation. Charlie Adelson reassures Katie, Catherine McBanois, that if it is the police, that is a good thing. Charlie Adelson thinks that, hey, if it's the police, that means the police don't have enough evidence to charge anybody. You know, they're just fishing for information. And in fact, Charlie Adelson tells her, hey, if they had any evidence, we would have already gone to the airport. It's important to note that at the time of this conversation at Dolce Vita, no arrests had been made in this case. And the only thing that police had released to the public at that point was a photo of the light-colored Prius that fled the scene. Police knew at that point that it was Garcia and Rivera who were in the Prius, but the public didn't know that yet. Charlie Adelson gives McBanois very precise instructions on how to deal with the blackmailer. He tells her to call the blackmailer and tell her that my friends, meaning the Adelson family, have no idea what you're talking about, and I'm just going to give you this money as charity, but don't contact these people again or they'll go to the police. And Charlie Adelson said he would give McBanois the $5,000 to pay off the blackmailer who approached his mother, except that he's concerned that this guy won't go away. He'll get that $5,000 and then he'll just keep coming back for more money. We'll see him as an easy target. And so Charlie Adelson then offers that the best solution might be to have the blackmailer killed, and that he's willing to pay whatever it takes.
What?
He says, so
Charlie, you're already balls deep, bro. Why grow a fucking third ball and put that one into? Why would you do that? Did I miss something?
He says, so help me God, if they F with my family, it's gonna be Nazi shit, because this will be done.
If somebody said this to me, I wouldn't even know what you meant by this. It feels like it feels like a sentence that's just like out of place. Like, this doesn't even feel threatening. You just look stupid.
And after hearing that Charlie Adelson wants someone killed and is willing to pay whatever it takes to get it done, Magbanua then asked Charlie Adelson to help her out. And Charlie Adelson reassures her she'll be taken care of and reminds her she's on salary at the parents' dental practice. And then Charlie Adelson immediately calls the defendant to let her know everything's fine and he has handled the situation. He does this using some pretty obvious code words that you'll often hear these conspirators use to mask the meaning of what they're talking about in case law enforcement's listening. Magbanua then, also using code words, calls Garcia, and she tasks him with calling the number on their paperwork and finding the identity of the blackmailer. After that undercover operation was over in 2016, Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia are arrested, and they're charged with the same charges before y'all in this trial. Luis Rivera, who was the second person in that Prius, cut a deal with the state and told law enforcement the truth about the murder of Dan Markel and the people responsible for it.
These guys, even though they carried out the murder, are going to get less time than Donna Adelson and Charlie Adelson. In fact, I think Donna might actually get the harshest sentence because, to be honest, when you look at everything, if it weren't for Donna Adelson, Dan Markel would still be alive.
Rivera described how Garcia told him that this was a job that Magbanua was able to get for them, and it was in Tallahassee, and it paid $100,000, and that Rivera was going to get a third of the money. Rivera said that during the trip to Tallahassee, Garcia had a piece of paper with a picture of the man that they were hired to kill and some handwritten notes. And during that trip, Rivera said that the first call that either of them made after the homicide was from Garcia to Magbanua, where Garcia told her that the job was done and Magbanua assured them they would get their money the next day.
I want to see what the prosecution has to say about Donna attempting to flee to Vietnam, and then we'll roll over to what the defense's statements were.
Charlie Adelson was convicted in November of 2023. And within hours of his guilty verdict, this defendant began to plan to flee the United States to a country that she could not be extradited from in order to avoid being arrested for Dan Markel's murder.
I'm gonna say it again. Donna Adelson is a little racist. I was surprised that she would be down to go to some like super foreign country, but then she picked a place that she couldn't be extradited from.
The defendant on her phone researched countries that did not have extradition treaties with the United States, and she applied for an emergency visa to Vietnam. She was overheard planning to put her money in trust for her grandchildren.
Hours after Charlie got the guilty verdict. Hours after. Donna ain't care about them kids. Oh, I just want the kids to be close to me in Miami. No. She's going to Vietnam. She never cared, Wendy. It was all just a game because she's obsessed with power. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that insane?
And she and her husband purchased one-way tickets with a fast-track emergency visa to Vietnam. And Vietnam does not have an extradition treaty with the U.S., as she would have learned from her searches. And just days later, she was stopped by law enforcement on the jetway in Miami International Airport, where she was boarding her one-way flight to Vietnam. And she was then charged for her participation in the murder of Dan Markel.
I cannot express enough excellent police work across the board, guys. They caught her just before she was about to take off. They got her. They got her. And she could have just been gone. And that would have been it. The other thing is they waited just until she was about to leave. So she didn't make it to Vietnam. This was just her past, like, yeah, she's in, she's got the electronic visa, let her in. She thought that this was it. She was going to go to Vietnam and it was going to be like, oh, sorry, you can't take me. There's no extradition here. And she was going to leave Wendy and the children to deal with the rest of the trial. Mom was gone. And what do you think she was going to be doing? She was going to be yelling orders from Vietnam to Wendy. She was going to be telling Wendy to come out to Vietnam and bring the children because she's obsessed with power. The other great thing about them catching her just before she was about to board is it shows intention. That body cam video of Donna literally about to get on a one-way plane to Vietnam is powerful for the prosecution. It's powerful. And that was calculated police work. I love it. How is the defense going to follow that up? Okay, dude. I told y'all I can't be in a legitimate courtroom because if you say enough and my little gut starts going, oh yeah, that's the right answer. I'm going that way. I'm going that way. Give me that 1 hour statement and I would have said, fire her out of a cannon into the sun. That would have been my immediate declaration. But of course, I do have to hear from the defense. I got to know.
Well, I'm going to try and talk slow because if I don't, the court reporter's going to scream at me.
Oh, a little humor. Donna loves that. Look at Donna laughing.
I just want to start by saying this. Remember, during the course of the proceedings, that the state always gets to go first. But the defense has a right to be heard, too. So please keep an open mind until you hear from us as well.
Look at Donna just kind of smile, just a little bit.
You just sat.
I don't know how to explain it, but this very mild expression from Donna. Donna's got hope. She's like, give him hell, girl. She trusts this lady. Dude, that's okay.
You just sat through an opening statement. The presentation was pretty cool. I'm old-fashioned, so I don't use that kind of stuff, but
Donna loves that.
For an hour, you heard about this killing, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And you heard an awful lot about why they think Donna Adelson has the motive to kill Danny Markel. And you heard an awful lot about what other people did in this case. But not a single piece of evidence was discussed that shows that Donna Adelson planned this.
Gaslighting simulator. You're in a gaslighting simulator. I'll make you watch an entire hour of the opening statement, and then I put you in this. Boom, gaslighting simulator. I told you, I'm not going to be able to listen to this whole thing.
And I just want you to be mindful that when we're at the end of the case and the judge gives you the instructions, and he gives them, I won't do that. When he gives you the instructions, he's not going to give you an instruction that says the state has to prove motive. He's going to give you elements of each offense, and he's going to say that each element of each offense has to have actual evidence to prove that. Not motive, actual evidence that those things happen. We're going to have a long trial, and I know you all are kind of prepared for that, at least in your mind. You know it's going to happen, and it's going to be long, and we're going to have days. And you're going to hear a lot of evidence and phone calls and text messages and emails. But I want to ask you to never, ever stop thinking for the 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks that we're here about why it is we are really here.
Gaslight yourself.
Not just because Donna Adelson is on trial.
And not just for us.
But because 2 men killed Danny Markel. Don't forget Danny.
Her not saying Dan Markel, her saying Danny, that's also a tactic to make you feel like the defense team is a little bit closer, a little more cordial with him. It kind of reframes the story. When you're in the courtroom, it can almost make, for some people, it feel like these are 2 different people and 2 different stories. Her using the name Danny rather than Dan, like they did in the entire opening statement for the prosecution, is tactical.
He was an amazing professor. He was very well educated. He had 2 degrees, I think, from Harvard, one of them from law school there. He was a professor. He had students. He was very well respected by his peers, his colleagues. He traveled all over the place to talk at conferences. They wanted him there for him to come and speak. Very, very intelligent man, and I can't say I know because I never met him. I wish I had. But I know he had to be proud of all that he had achieved.
I am very curious if in this statement she will mention him being a good father. No matter what, that would be very strange for the defense to not mention. If she's trying to appease her client and Donna hates Dan Markel, then she probably knows Donna would be miffed if she said anything about him being a dad. So I'm very curious if she mentions that here, because it would be very normal for her to bring up him being a great dad. It'd be very normal.
His career was important to him.
Not just his career.
Him continuing to educate himself so that he could get tenure at the law school as a professor. He worked very hard. He earned a lot.
I'm waiting for it.
What he did not earn was for somebody to do this to him. More important to Danny Markel than anything in the world were his little boys. He had 2 little children when this happened to him. A 3-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Say he was a great dad. Say he was a great dad.
The divorce first happened, when Wendy moved out, he did not want the divorce. That was in 2012.
Say good husband or good dad,
and
somewhere in there.
And they squabbled during the divorce. They did. Each side argued for their side. The other side argued for their side. That's what happens in divorce. Divorce is not fun. Divorce is not usually friendly. Some of us have had friendly divorces, but not everybody does. And a lot of things were said. But moving forward to 2014 is where we're going to concentrate on, because that's when Danny was killed. And in 2000,
am I tripping, or is it not strange so far that she hasn't called Dan he was a good husband or a good boyfriend early, or he was a good dad? Nope, nothing. Just he had a great career.
And in 2014, with these little boys that he had, the divorce had been over for a year. Relocation, the opportunity, even discussion about it, ended. On July 31st, when the final judgment was entered, relocation was over. The state told you that. The court denied it with prejudice. She could never raise it again. Nobody was fighting anymore about where these little boys would be. Danny advocated for not only himself in the divorce, he advocated for his children. They are an important part of his life.
Say he was a great dad.
He wanted as much time as he could get with them. They ended up splitting the time equally between Wendy and Danny. If it wasn't his time to have the children, he would go to their little preschool and spend time with them there. He wanted to talk to them on the phone as much as he could. You guys are way younger than me, so maybe you don't even know about this, but I guess there was a thing called Skype. I don't even know if it still exists, but I guess it's like FaceTiming, but doing it on your computer. And that's how he wanted to talk to his kids, so that he could see them when he wasn't with them while he spoke to them. Now, at 3 and 4, it's kind of hard to wrangle them to sit down in front of a screen, so Danny came up with a really good idea. When he Skyped the children, it would be most of the time after the kids had had their dinner and had their baths, where they're kind of calmed down, they're not in their little running around state. And he would read bedtime stories to them. And he didn't have his little kids. He still wanted to know that when the children went to bed, they didn't forget about Daddy. And he made sure that didn't happen.
Y'all notice how the other one, we was getting evidence right from the beginning. We're getting timelines, mugshots, 1080p photos, call logs, emails, evidence. And she's out here talking about some, I don't know if you guys know what Skype is, but what? Sorry, I gotta see a little bit more. This is Donna. I think you're going to jail. I think you will be going to jail, Donna Adelson.
These kids are not deprived of their father. Their father was brutally taken from them. Not just when they were 3 or 4, or 5 or 6, or 7 or 8, but up into their teens. They lost the opportunity because someone took it from them to grow up with a father, to have his involvement and influence in their lives, to talk about what he did as a kid and share his experiences. All of that was stolen from him.
Lady.
That's very important. You've heard a lot about how she hated him. She said some ugly things during the divorce. Pretty foul things, actually.
Normalizing it.
But you're going to learn through the evidence why that was occurring and how she was actually interacting with Danny. I want to talk to you now about my client, Donna Adelson.
Finally.
Donna Adelson. She is a normal person, just like all of us.
Nope.
At the time that this happened, she was 64 years old, married to her husband, Dr. Adelson, a dentist. Now they've been married 54 years. It was somewhere in the 40-year range when this happened 11 years ago. And she got up in the morning and went to work, not at her and Harvey's business, like you were just told. She went to the business owned by her son. Every morning they got up and they went to work.
Jesus Christ.
She did the books, she kept the books, she greeted patients, she got charts out. At 7:30 every morning, she was there and organized and had everybody ready to go because they had a little staff meeting so everybody could know what to expect, what patients they were going to see, what they were going to take care of.
Control freak.
She was there working, sometimes late into the evening, just like all of us. She's a normal person. People who know Donna will tell you that she is not the person that the state is portraying her to be. She's kind, caring, loving. She cares more about people than she does about herself.
I've had enough of the defense opening statement. Look, I am never going to take my foot off the Adelson trial. I can't do it. I've seen too much.